everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am so excited today to bring to you my guest, Kerry Brodie, over there, to talk about how culinary training builds confidence, community, and careers for refugees. And before the show started, and when I was prepping to get ready for the show, it reminded me of a story from last May. I was managing food and beverage for an event in Orlando, and one of the servers and I got chatting in between food functions, and he said to me, I came here to the United States, and I don't remember from where, not speaking a lick of English, and not he didn't have a family or anything. He just came here, and he got a job in a hotel as a banquet captain or banquet server. And as he's been here for 38 years, I believe. He taught himself English. He got married, and he's put 4 kids through college, working as a banquet server in hotels. And I just think this really ties into, Kerry, what you've built as the founder and executive director of Emma's Torch. And Emma's Torch, for everybody to know, has locations in New York City and Washington, D.C. And since its founding, which we'll find out more about what it does, has worked with over 600 students, generating more than $25 million in increased wages for those graduates. So welcome to the show, Kerry.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you. We were talking about that story, and you actually said it sounds like one of your students as well. Which is kind of amazing. But can you tell us what Emma's Torch is? I didn't describe it. I just said who you were.
I love it. So Emma's Torch is a nonprofit social enterprise. And what we do is we provide culinary training and job placement services to refugees, asylees, and survivors of human trafficking. And we do this all within the context of our existing food businesses. So we have 2 cafes and a catering business in New York City and a catering business and a cafe down here in Washington, D.C., where our students are learning on the job as well as in the classroom before we help them launch new careers. That story really resonated with me because so many of our students come here and their story is so similar to so many others of coming here, wanting a better life, wanting to work towards their goals. And I'm grateful that Emma's Torch gets to be a part of that process.
How did you come up with this? I mean, I'm looking at your resume or your bio that you sent, and I'm like, you graduated from the Culinary Institute of Culinary Education. You've received a Wusthof Award for Leadership and was named a graduate of the ACCSC Graduate of the Year. You have a master's in government from Johns Hopkins, and you have a bachelor's in Near Eastern Studies from Princeton. Holy moly. I mean, with all of that education that you got, did this formulate while you were in school? How did this come about?
It's definitely not a straight line. And I think that oftentimes I look back and I at the time was so worried, like, what do I want to do with my life? What is next? How am I going to do this? And I thought I had an answer. I was like a Washington, D.C. kid. I was going to work in public policy. I wanted to be in the West Wing, like the TV show. And I graduated, and I was so lucky to get to have an amazing early part of my career working at both the Israeli embassy and then at the Human Rights Campaign. And while I worked with tremendous people and I got to witness really huge turning points in history. I got to be at the Supreme Court when marriage equality was announced. And even despite all of that, I realized that public policy was probably not the space for me. I'm really impatient. And I really wanted to be doing things on the ground. And at the same time, I would walk to work, and I walked by a homeless shelter. So I would volunteer there in the mornings before work. And that was when I started having conversations with people about food. This is a muffin. What type of muffin do you like? What do we think is a morning glory muffin? Which is still a question that I have. We serve them here. And I'm like, what makes it morning glory? And I just remember those conversations changed the dynamic. It wasn't, I'm handing you something and you need something from me. It's, we have a connection. You and I are not that different. And a lot of my work with the Human Rights Campaign at the time was focusing on LGBTQ asylum seekers. This was in 2015 and 2016. And I had this crazy idea. Couldn't we change how we talk about refugees if we talked instead about our neighbors? I was really disheartened to be seeing that the state that I was living in, Maryland, where I grew up, signed a letter saying, no, don't resettle in our state. 27 governors signed onto this letter. I thought, how can we be living in a world where that is the case? And obviously at the time, I thought that 60 million refugees and having a cap on refugee resettlement at 80,000 was insane. I can't believe that we're standing for that. Fast forward nearly a decade, and that number of refugees worldwide has ballooned beyond 100 million, and that cap is much lower. But despite that disheartening reality, I think that there's a lot of work we can do in changing how we think about new arrivals. And so I was a really naive 25-year-old. I thought someone should do this and I would love to go work for them. And my husband asked me the most important question of my life, which is, why not you? What would it take for you to do this? And so I tease him a lot that was probably the worst question he's ever asked, because we moved to New York. I went to culinary school. He was recruited he did all the IT and dishwashing and emotional support you can imagine. But we created a community around this idea, and we were able to open. First, it was a pop-up cafe for 6 months. Then we took on a new location, opened that restaurant. Then we opened the Brooklyn Public Library location. And we weathered the various storms that have thrown our way with really in the power of community to get us here. And now we get to be open in 2 cities.
That is amazing. I want to give a shout out real quick to, I've got Adia and William Brathwaite and Wynn Bolton over on Instagram listening to us, tuning in. So anybody, if you've got questions for Kerry, let me know. So, I mean, that's a lot, in a short period of time, but I'm like, it's grown so much. And so 600 students, is it more than that now?
I haven't checked the latest numbers, but we have worked with, over 600 students. I think we're probably closer to 650 at this point. Okay. And it's really grown in scale. It used to be that we were working with 2 students at a time. Now we have 3 different program sites, each with between 7 and 25 students at any given moment. And we're not just seeing that, we're seeing the ripple effect of when these students become graduates, when they go start careers in other restaurants and then become supervisors, open their own restaurants, really pursue their own path. So it's really wonderful to see that ripple effect in action.
What are you in the classroom? What are you teaching them? So in the kitchens, you're teaching them how to cook, but in the classrooms, what are you teaching them?
That is such an important question, and something that we spent a lot of time on, because we realized that on the one hand, knife skills, how to read a recipe is super important and getting repetition there. But that's not the only, forget the pun, that's not the only ingredient. The other piece of it is we do a lot of work around employability, equity, and empowerment training. And so we have wonderful social workers on our team who lead this work, but who ensure that if we're learning about empowerment in the classroom, that travels through the whole organization. If we're practicing how to do an interview, we're not just teaching you the words to say to get the job, we're also teaching you how to articulate your goals and what you've told us you want to work towards. How can we stand next to you in that? And so these 2 pieces, those more tangible skills, as well as that employability and equity piece, really come together so that we're not just about job placement here, we're about creating long-term careers.
That's awesome. Now, how do you handle language barriers with some of these refugees?
So we always have so many different languages in our kitchen. And I often joke because students will say, oh, I'm so sorry I don't speak English. I'm like, what are you sorry about? You speak 6 different languages. I'm sorry that I don't speak Fulani. And I'm just so far away.
Fulani from?
So from Central Africa. And so there's such an interesting dynamic around language and food as a common language. And so oftentimes, so we have English classes within our program. And that's been really effective for English as a new language for people to learn, especially because we're focusing on vocabulary that will help them in the culinary industry. So it's not just random words, it's what do you need to succeed here? And then the other piece that I think is just so remarkable to be alive at this moment of our phones have so much power. You can take a picture and translate a label. You can write notes on your phone. You can take videos, you can tag them. And so we also encourage our students to use whatever resources they have. And so it's really special. I walk into the kitchen, there's always multiple languages and delicious food. So no complaints there.
Well, and, talking to some other organizations that have done similar work, helping provide places for refugees to cook, because food is a universal language, right? And cooking for somebody is, what you're teaching also is fostering dignity and inclusion and belonging. And I'm going to bring a little bit of politics in there because we're getting a lot of backlash, and it's not just the US, but from other countries saying we don't want refugees coming here, we don't have the space for you. So how do you provide and help them feel that sense of dignity, inclusion, and belonging in what you're teaching them?
I think it's so interesting how quickly we assume a notion of scarcity when there's so much abundance around us. I think for us, it goes back to, well, who are we named after? So our organization is called Emma's Torch, and we're named after Emma Lazarus, who wrote the poem on the Statue of Liberty. A lot of people know the line, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." And what I love about it, aside from Emma Lazarus just being a fascinating individual, the poem is called The New Colossus, and she wrote it to raise money for the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. So already we're like, wow, it's like the basis upon which liberty rests. But it's more than that. What does the poem mean? It's not actually about those people coming. It's about us. You want to be strong. You want to be the next Rome, the next anything of strength. It's the ability to welcome in the newest arrivals. That's it. That is what it means.
So powerful.
Yeah. So that's like what we're really focusing on. But I will say, like, that's beautiful in like the abstract. And then how do we live that in our day to day? How do we ensure that our students are welcomed into a space that one of our social workers told me, it's not just a safe space, it's a brave space. And that's really important in how we support our staff to support our students, how our guests come into the space and how they interact directly with students says a lot and sends a real signal to our students that what they bring to the table has value and that they are worthy of dignity just by merit of being. And we try and signal that to them in every way that we can, because we have to combat that other narrative, because that other narrative is not just harming our students, but it's harming us as a society. Every single one of us benefits when we accept that welcoming others is a sense of strength, not of weakness.
Who are the people that you're serving?
So we work with, broadly speaking, survivors of forced migration. So refugees, asylum seekers, survivors of human trafficking, people who worked with the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan, people fleeing because of who they are and who they love or their religious identity. But what's interesting is that is almost the label that we give because it's a visa status. But really who we're serving are individuals who want to build a better life in this country. And I think that's the most relatable thing. It doesn't matter where you're from. Every one of us wakes up in the morning wanting to create a better future. And so our students are ages 18 to 65. They speak tons of different languages. Yeah, we have a wide range. About 60% of our students are women. Many of them are mothers, primary caretakers for their family. Some, it's the first time working outside the home. Others have advanced degrees and advanced careers in other countries. And so it's that similarity of purpose of we want to build a better lives for ourselves and our family and our community, and that diversity of experience that is just such a beautiful collaboration here.
And how do they find you, or how do you find them?
So through a couple of ways. One of the most important ones is that everybody should have the humility when looking at these problems. There's huge problems. There is no world in which one organization, one person, one entity can solve it all. And so we work with a network of organizations. So that means that we don't have housing access within our space, but we do have partners within the community and ecosystem of support, homeless shelters, legal aid clinics. And those partners refer clients to our program. But also over time, we've grown, and now about 40% of our students come through word of mouth. So one person will graduate and they'll mention it to another person at the shelter where they're living, or another person in an English class, or somebody at work. And so that's been really wonderful to see that network grow organically as well.
And then where are the locations of your cafes, and so who are the guests that you're actually feeding?
Yeah, so we have 2 cafes in New York and 1 in DC. And then we have a catering facility in New York as well. But our 2 cafes in New York are in the heart of Brooklyn. One is at the Brooklyn Public Library. So we frequently have people who have no idea that we're there. They're just coming to get books or to do one of the other amazing things that happen at the Brooklyn Public Library. And they just want really delicious food and great coffee. And we're there to give it to them. And similarly in Carroll Gardens, we're in the thick of it. We're surrounded by wonderful restaurants, many of whom are employment partners of ours. And so that also means that what we're creating, what our students are serving the community, has to be up to that standard. And we really hold ourselves to that standard. And it's a point of pride for us as well. And then we're in Northeast DC, not too far from Catholic University on Rhode Island Avenue. And so it's been wonderful to be here and get to know this community. This is our newest cafe. So we've only been here about 18 months, and it's just been a joy to get to know this area.
I worked there a long, long time ago, 1985.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. You've got to come check us out again.
No, 85 was before I went to college. 95.
Okay, gotcha.
95. Yeah, I'm never mind. But I planned events and actually helped market the new phone system that was getting installed in all the dorms. So that's very, very old. What you describe your work as mission driven and data informed. Can you explain kind of what metrics matter when you're talking about the impact of what you're doing?
Absolutely. I think there's an interesting dynamic within the nonprofit and impact space of, on the one hand, we know that numbers are not sufficient. How do you put a numerical value on somebody's smile, on a sense of well-being? However, numbers can get us close. And so we look at a couple of numbers, mostly as a way of making sure that we are actually delivering on the promise to our students, because we're asking somebody to give us their most precious resource, their time. We're asking them to dedicate 40 hours a week for 11 weeks and to trust us that on the other end of that, if they put in the work, we're going to be able to help them begin careers with upward mobility. And so in order to hold true to that and to really hold true to what we promise every student who comes into our program, we look at a couple of things. One is, do students graduate? We need to make sure that the program we have created serves the need of the constituents that we're serving. If we don't see a high graduation rate, well, that tells us something about how we're teaching. We're not delivering on that initial promise. So that's step one. Step two is, who begins a job and how long after graduating do they get a new paycheck? And so we hold ourselves to a really high standard. We have an average of 2 weeks between graduation and job placement. And we track towards a 90% job placement rate. We sometimes will have students who graduate and maybe have external needs that they need to meet. We keep our door open. Come back to us when you are ready. And then we look at wage growth over time. This past year, we had a 5 times increase of compared to pre-program earnings, which is just huge if you think about what that means for financial stability. And then we synthesize all of that. And this is where I get really nerdy on the philanthropic side of, we look at what is the philanthropic ROI. So if you're a donor and you give me $1, how much is that dollar worth in terms of increased wages next year, in 2 years, and then we project out to 10 years. Wow. And we track towards, in the first year, between a 1.2 and a 1.4x ROI. And then over time, we get closer to 10x is the goal. So in that 10-year span. So we really want to make sure that if you're giving us your support, that we are maximizing it, not just in terms of what it does today, but how does that change somebody's life long term? And so far, we've created something to the tune of $23 million of increased wages. So that's not just about what that means for our students. That means to the community, to their families, to tax revenue. Right. And so we hope that those metrics help give some context, also that amazing sense of confidence in those smiles that we see at graduation.
That's amazing. And it kind of goes back to that first story that I said, the guy that came with he couldn't speak English. And then after 38 years of being here, he's put 4 kids through college. I mean, that increased revenue or a salary over those 38 years is huge.
It's huge. And that doesn't happen overnight. I think that we want to make an immediate impact, but more than that, we want a lasting impact. And so it's really exciting when we hear from students and we catch up with them and we find out not just what happened the first year out, but what has that meant for them over time? Because life is long and we want it to be long and for our students to be thriving.
Well, and are there any stories, how this financial independence has transformed some lives of your students?
Absolutely. We've seen so many different students go on to do tremendous things. One of my favorites is that one of our very first graduates in Brooklyn, a few years ago, I was contacted by a reporter asking for a quote. And I was like, oh, interesting. That would be nice about Emma's Torch. No. It was a quote because this person was being profiled in the New Yorker for their hot new restaurant that they were opened in Brooklyn. And first of all, I was so proud and so excited for Mazen. And then I also texted him like, excuse me, sir, I should not be hearing about this from the New Yorker. It's like, no, I wanted a surprise. So it was really exciting. And now we've been able to take our students to go see his restaurant. So I think there's something to be said for, we tell our students what we believe is possible, but there's a little bit, I joke about being mom zoned of like, but you like us. Like, no, this is possible. We've seen it happen. Right. And we see that in so many different ways. Students, their excitement when they cash their first paycheck. It's just these little moments that give you confidence, that help you put another foot in front of the other, which just seems like these huge successes on the individual level.
Totally. I mean, and just the fact that he's now sharing his story with your with your current students or potential, students. I mean, and the fact that there's a story about him saying, this is where I got my start, is huge. And so kudos to you.
Thank you.
Okay. So a lot of people that watch this show, are in the hospitality or event planning and in hospitality in some sort of way, but what can they learn from Emma's torch about creating safe, inclusive, and sustainable dining experiences through what you're teaching and the members that come through the program?
I love that question. And of course, if anybody's interested in learning more from me, you can always reach out. We also cater, and that's been really fun. And I think through the lens of catering, we've also seen the power of these events. And so I bring up catering and events in general because there's something so wonderful about you're taking people into a new context. And so you have to be establishing that brave space. And I think that there's something transferable no matter who you are, whether you are showing up at a corporate event, at a wedding, at a bar mitzvah, which are all things that we have catered in the past. What do you set up so that it feels familiar and it feels like it can embolden people to bring their best selves? When we cater and when we work with our students, we really try and communicate as much as possible. What is our run of show? How is this going to work? Who is working next to you? And I think that that's transferable no matter what context you're in. The more that somebody can feel connected to what is happening and who is it happening with, the stronger I think these events can be. So that's been, I think, one of our lessons throughout has been, how do we reinforce that with everything that we do?
Yeah, because it's not, I don't know why this pops into my brain, but I remember talking to a Marine, right? He goes, I don't care who you are, what color you are, what gender you are. If you have the same uniform on that I do, and you're fighting it for the same thing that I'm do, I don't care. It doesn't matter, right? Because we're fighting for the same cause or we're working towards the same thing. And I think that resonates exactly with what you just said.
Yeah, I love that. I love that example. And I also think that it helps you're not fighting each other. We can externalize, like, what is the challenge? And look, all of us have been at events or things where something's going wrong. And okay, but that's not against someone else. That is, what is this problem? And can we pass it together? I think it's so important.
Well, and actually that reminds me of another like catering related story that I posted a couple of weeks ago. I did an event at the JW Marriott Austin. And I had a gentleman text me or email me 2 days before he was coming from India saying, halal, can you feed me? And I immediately reached out to the chef, and he's like, yeah, here's my certification for my halal chicken. And he met with the chef when he got there. And then on that last day, he's like, I need to talk to the chef. I want a picture with him and thank him personally face to face for feeding me. And one of the things on that last meal that he got was that the chef realized that he had somebody from India as an intern on the team right now. And so he went down and chatted with that person and said, hey, what is a good dish from where you are that we can make him, et cetera. And so when they met, the attendee was like, the flavors, I couldn't believe that the flavors were so authentic, and that intern and the attendee ended up being from the same region of India. I'm like, how is that possible? But it just reiterated that how food matters.
That's so real. And I think it's, food has a sense of place, of nostalgia, of belonging that is just, it's magic. I think it's truly magical. And it's exciting when we can harness that magic to build connections.
How do you, just kind of based on that story and the backgrounds of your students, coming from all over the world, what kind of food are you teaching them to cook? And are they teaching each other, the foods of their nation, of their culture in the classroom?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that we kind of strive to like balance in two different ways. On the one hand, our menu is pretty set because our menu is actually an execution of the culinary fundamental skills that our students need for jobs. So we need to keep that as this, like, I sometimes joke, it's like homework. Like we need to make sure our students can do these certain skills in this progressive order. So the menu is very much informed by that. It's new American cuisine, but it is prepared by new Americans. So the flavors have those little global twists, those integration of different spices, that integration of different techniques, of things that are both familiar and new to our students, and therefore familiar and new to our guests. It's almost like this dialogue on the menu. And that also, we try and stay seasonal and local where possible. And it's a source of great creativity across our team and informed by our students. And then for when our students graduate, we say, great, you've cooked our menu, you've learned these building blocks, cook from the heart. What is it that you want to create in honor of your graduation? And we talk about recipe development and how do you manage your time and production. And there's a lot of learning that goes into that, like really final exam. But there's also that exam, that element of heart. And we don't push our students that you have to cook something from your country of origin, or we ask our students to cook something that means something to you and to share why. And it's really beautiful what people come up with. Frequently it's food that has nostalgia, food that your mom cooked, your grandmother cooked, or that the community would come together and produce for big celebrations. And so that is also just a source of great joy for our whole team. We get to taste things that are delicious. We get to learn about cultures that we don't know as well. And it's almost like a real window into the soul of our students.
That's awesome. Right. My friend Jenny popped in here. It says, I love that story. Makes them feel so seen. And I'm assuming you're talking about my Austin story from the guy from India, but it does. But even with what you just said, Kerry, I think it does make them feel seen because you're having them do something that matters to them.
Exactly.
And cooking it that way. Yeah. So majority of the people, are they in the training, it's more of being a back of the house culinary team member, or is there any training to be, front of the house, banquet captains, things, food and beverage directors?
Yeah. So most of our students go into back of house. Sometimes it was in catering, sometimes the industry is large. We do have some students who do gravitate towards front of house, and we do barista training as well as some front of house training, though most of our training is back of house.
Okay. And, that's knife skills, that's food safety. So they're getting all of those certifications that come with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How, this just popped into my head, like allergens, like I'm sure you've got people from Europe and other countries, that have different allergens that are identified versus what we have in here. How do they understand those concepts?
Yeah, it's part of the vocabulary training, the food safety training. We teach about allergens, we teach about restrictions, we teach about halal, we teach about kosher, we teach about all of these different pieces because just like anyone else, our students want to make others feel welcome. So how do you do that? You make sure that the food is safe for them. You make sure that it meets their needs and that you're aware of those needs. And so we do a lot of learning around that. And then there's also just the reality that because we operate our own business and we operate our own catering, our students are doing it in real time as well. And so it's both classroom learning and then on the job learning.
And I think those hand in hand help enhance so much because there's only so many webinars or classes that you can take online. And then how do you actually apply that into the real world? Sometimes you don't get that.
Exactly.
How, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, in some of the things that you said too, but confidence building, right? You're learning a new skill but you're also coming to a new country or you're coming into a new field of, work. How important is that in what you're teaching? And how does I think I remember getting knife skills from my friend Gina Berry in Atlanta, right? And like being able to use a knife and chopping fast is really does make you more confident in the kitchen, just that one tool. How does that play along with everything else you're teaching?
Absolutely. I think that the confidence has to come from all sides. So we do our employability and equity training, but then also like mastering new skills and seeing how far you've come and seeing how much faster you can do things and getting that positive feedback from your chef. It's all those little ways that we can signal to people their worth and that they should feel that level of confidence throughout the program. And so we really do try and make sure that our feedback is directed into that space of when you're getting feedback and it might not be what you wanted to hear. Well, how do we get that to a place of increased confidence? And we do that because I think that confidence is one of those biggest factors in job placement and long-term employment is, do you feel confident enough with what you know now to keep learning and keep pushing yourself to grow?
Right. I don't know why this just popped into my head, but watching The Bear, right? the TV show The Bear. I'm like looking at that fast pace back of house, and even the connection with the front of the house with cousin. I mean, is there some training around managing potentially hostile work environments and building that camaraderie among everyone else? Because even like, I think I've only watched 1 or 2 episodes of the season, but even like, oh, I'm going to help in the pastry shop, in pastries, to help each other in the kitchen.
Yeah, I think that teamwork and learning how to work with other people, especially through points of conflict, is an essential skill, not just in the kitchen and anywhere where you work. I think the kitchen, it's hot, there are sharp things around. So like there's an added, a heightened, let's say, sensitivity. I love The Bear. I've only watched the first season, but it's very fun. There are parts of it that ring a little too close to home, but not home, close to some restaurants where I have worked or seen. But we also make sure that our students know that respect is something that they should warrant every single day. And so I think that there's a lot in that about camaraderie and working together that's lovely. There's also some yelling and behaviors that we would not tolerate from employment partners, and that our employment partners wouldn't tolerate from their teams either. So I think there's kind of that balance of kitchens are hard, the intensity is real, but how do we do that and tackle these challenges from a place of respect and team building, not from a place of blame and yelling?
Right, exactly. And because the kitchen runs a lot smoother when everybody works together.
Absolutely.
We won't go into any more episodes of The Bear about that. But I mean, okay, so now also there's conversations. I've had conversations with caterers, because you do have a catering arm and then you have the cafe arm. Those are sometimes 2 different skill sets, even working in a hotel kitchen, right? Because at a restaurant, you're putting out maybe 100 plates a night, right? Whereas in a catering thing, you have to put 100 plates out at one time.
Yeah.
So how do you train that? And what have you learned that our hospitality partners in the convention center and hotels could potentially learn from what you're teaching and what you've learned?
So I think that there's both what are the transferable skills and what are the skills that are very unique. And so we just opened our catering facility in New York, and we're a lot of the curriculum is the same, urgency, knife skills, all those other pieces, but there's nuance, especially around timing of plating. There's also nuance around menu development. I think that there's something really interesting there. We often talk to people who are like, but wouldn't it be great to do this item? Honestly, I'm one of those people like, couldn't we do this on our catering menu? And then you have to actually think about it. Like, do you think that you could plate that so that all of the dishes go out looking exactly the same and drop at the same moment, and you have the variations for allergies? And that complexity is so fun. I think that there's something so wonderful about that. And in conversations that we have with people about their events as well, like if you're planning a wedding, you want it to be unique and special in yours. And also you want the food to come out at the same time, looking the same. And you want it to be like both a central point and no friction. And so I think there's something really great to teach in that space. I also think it's an industry that part of the industry that lends itself to a lot of flexibility. We have some students from catering is a great fit because the hours are different than in a more traditional restaurant. And we have students who want to start their own catering businesses because it is something that a lot of them like, oh, well, I cook for my church, or I cook for my mosque, or I cook for my neighbors. How do I turn that into a business? And I think that there's so much richness in that of the difference between catering for your neighbors and catering at this larger scale. And there's so much learning that you can do there that it's just an exciting pathway to explore with our students.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a different skill set, but it is such an opportunity to grow and feed so many more people.
Absolutely.
Right? And probably a little bit more flexible, like you said, in the timing wise, because you can say, oh, no, I'm not open on weekends, or I only cater during the week, depending on what you're doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you wish event professionals, based on your experience, understood about the opportunity to connect their food and beverage choices to the broader social impact?
Yeah, I think it's something that we enjoy those conversations, because I think in general, when you say to someone, you can make a choice that serves multiple interests of yours. So you want an event that is going to be seamless, beautiful, and not cause you problems, to be honest. Like, you do not want your caterer to be causing you problems. And you want something memorable. And I think that memorable is there an idea that can stick with people? Is there something beyond just the food on the plate that will resonate? I think that, catering is a major expense for events, period. We all know that. And so can you make that expense mean more? Can you tell guests and make sure that they know that your breakfast today, your dinner tonight means more than just that moment of connectivity? I think it sticks with people. It's, you know, that wonderful line from Maya Angelou, like, you're going to forget what people said, or but you'll never forget how they made you feel. And I think catering in particular, when you embed within the catering that greater mission, that greater approach, and it doesn't have to be with workforce development or refugee resettlement. It can be the environmental impact. It can be small business integration. It can be the tiniest choices communicated in an elegant way can make people feel different as they're leaving the table.
And that reminds me of being in the Vancouver Convention Center for the first time. Well, probably not the first time, but as an event planner, and the beverage napkins that they were using, they were telling the story of how they built the convention center, because it was over water, and how they protected the land below them, you know, with the design of the convention center. And that's how, you know, that, you know, brings the story forward. Right. And
I love that.
Yeah, it was really kind of fun. I mean, that was like 2010. So 15 years ago, but it's stuck with me, because it really, you have to share that story, right? And maybe you're partnering with the excess food, saying, hey, we're donating this excess food that we have that's prepared, but not served, and time and temperature controlled, you know, to this community, right? Or, I think the stories are really, really important. And I think with your catering, you can say, hey, this is who we are and how we're doing this and teaching.
Absolutely.
How, just kind of on the conversation of excess, but thinking about managing waste, you know, my friend Stephen Satterfield a long time ago said, you know, when he went to culinary school, it was like you had to make the carrot the perfect square, right? And then a lot of that, you know, went to the trash can, right? So how are you, because this food matters in so many ways, how are you teaching them managing waste in the kitchen?
I think it's been really interesting to see within the culinary industry, the renewed focus on waste. I think that there's been a lot of like people at the highest level leading that conversation. I think, you know, Danny Myers has led a lot of those conversations, the whole concept behind like Blue Hill, like Stone Barns, and like there's so much around that. And that conversation around waste is really interesting. And it means that we're no longer okay with the amount of food being thrown away. We are no longer okay with accepting that this is just an unsolvable problem, because it isn't unsolvable. And so I remember I was talking to a major food purveyor about, instead of talking about scraps, let's talk about sparks of creativity. And so first of all, our style of service, I know how to do all of those knife cuts. I know how much waste they produce. Let's find ways to use that waste, because there's no reason for waste. It's a spark of creativity. Can you use what's left on a fish to make a mousse? Can you use those scraps of carrots, the carrot tops, to make a pesto? Can you think more, and not just in terms of family meal, though we feed everybody on our team every single day. So there's very little food waste because we create meals out of it. And create is the right word, because it's a chance to repurpose and renew the products themselves. And I think that also is embedded in, do we respect the food that we're working with? Do we respect that this food, you know, a carrot was grown in the earth and had to be nourished from that first moment before it came on a truck to our location, and is now being turned into not just one meal, but all these different pieces? I think that's a big piece of it. We are not, strictly speaking, a food waste organization. That's not our main focus, but there's so many positive externalities that we can be a part of. And frankly, it's another one of those ways that, like, food waste is very bad for business. It's not just that preventing food waste is good for the world. There is like a purely bottom line driven approach for why we should stop wasting as much food as we do. And so I love to be able to speak out of those both pieces. There's the head and the heart of it. The heart of it of this is a carrot that needs respect, and the head of it of like, yeah, this makes sense on our bottom line. So those seem like low-hanging fruit for us.
Yeah. Well, and I posted just, you know, an hour before we came on, a picture of these 2 humongous bowls of ketchup that were placed on a buffet at breakfast. And there were 2 buffets. So there was 4 bowls of ketchup. And like, do you know that many people that put ketchup on their eggs or their potatoes? I'm like, why? This is blatant food waste, but it's not just the food. It's the cost. I'm like, how much did you spend on that ketchup that you're really now just throwing in the garbage?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think there's some education that goes into that as well of like, you never want to run out of food, but also like, let's be judicious about it. So it's a balance, and we don't always get it right, but it's definitely something we're working on.
But it's something to definitely think through. And I posted the picture of it, and somebody even said, yeah, they put 3 different types of sauces 6 times on a table for everybody. I'm like, so it's really rethinking some of those things that we have in that kitchen. And I think you've got that huge opportunity. I want to go back to that political, non-political question, but there's a lot of things going on in the world. How are and it goes back to that confidence thing. There's a lot of, you're working with a lot of refugees, and, how are you helping them approach the current state of affairs globally, around being a refugee?
Yeah, I think it's, I go back to a lot. Stacey Abrams used to say that she's not optimistic or pessimistic, she's determined. And I think that that's our team's approach in these moments. I cannot imagine how hard it is to be one of our students, to be somebody who's recently arrived in this country, and to be waking up in the morning to the types of headlines that we're seeing. And yet I feel a great sense of purpose and obligation because I get to work with those individuals. I have the great honor of walking into our space and getting to see them working in our kitchen. And so what we have been trying to as a team, especially now, is to really ensure that our students know that we are here for them as they are navigating these difficult times, that we're a resource. We know lawyers, we know different people who can help try and solve some of these problems. And also not to sugarcoat it, because it's bad. It is very bad. It is very scary. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And we don't want to be overly Pollyannish about that, because that also negates somebody's experience. And so we try and combat it through that shared idea of, we acknowledge that this is terrible. And also we are not going to let it stop us, and we're not going to succumb to despair. And if you want to show up here and work with us, we are here for you. And if you can articulate what you need, we are here for you. And if you just need someone to sit beside you and to stand beside you, we're not going anywhere.
That's awesome. Thank you. So how can, with thinking through that too, with your, what did you call them? Your partners that hire?
Our employment partners. Yeah.
Employment partners. And just the hospitality in general, it's, how can we help them better support, refugees and newcomers? And it's not just a job, right? It's a feeling of welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's so many different ways. One of them is just to be proactive and vocal about committing to hiring. I think that not wanting to shy away from it. Hiring somebody with a diverse background is a net positive for your organization. It's not a nice thing to do. And it's not just the right thing to do. It is good for you. And so I think that coming at it from that place of not just, oh, you're lucky to have this job, but actually I am lucky to work with you, sends a really clear message. And I think that also being mindful that people who have recently arrived in this country are carrying additional burdens, and that can come out in different ways. So we really make clear to our students they need to tell employers if they're running late, or if they have a legal appointment, or all these other pieces, but just occasionally checking in and just making sure that you are being mindful that people are carrying burdens that you might not see. And we try and be that resource for employment partners who come to us and say, hey, I don't know how to ask this, or is this the right word? Or I don't want to offend someone, but caring is not going to offend someone. And we want to be a resource for people in that space.
That's awesome. Okay. Some rapid fire questions.
Bring it on.
Okay. What's your favorite dish to cook at home?
I love to make challah. It's we make it every week for Shabbat dinner. And for me, that's just like a real favorite thing to cook with my kids.
And what is that?
So it is a braided enriched dough. Frequently people like it for a French toast, but it is part of the ceremony of bringing in the Sabbath on Friday nights. So you have 2 of them, and my kids are really into braiding them. So it's been fun.
Awesome. And how old are they?
I have a 6, 3, and newborn. So sorry. The 6 and 3-year-old are like into it. The newborn is just happy to be there.
Well, congratulations on the newborn.
Thank you. Thank you.
What is the most underrated ingredient?
Salt. people are just like, oh, whatever. No, salt is amazing. It is a game changer. You're curious about your dish, just add a little bit more. Sorry, not to ask your doctor, but like it probably needs more salt.
Even though our doctor says don't put some more salt on it. But
yeah, so maybe don't ask your doctor. Just put just a little sprinkle. It's fine.
What is your favorite cuisine to eat that you don't cook often?
I really like, what don't I cook often that I like? I just love all food, really. But I just love bread and like comfort food, like just that. And I don't cook it enough because I feel like you have to make it in large batches. And but that's what I really gravitate towards, like bread and like really like rich comfort food.
And going back to your kids, are they in the kitchen with you a lot?
Yeah. My 6-year-old and my 3-year-old love to cook, although they often like to bake. And I have started to realize it's just because they know that they get to taste the chocolate chip cookies. So like, that's like I think there's a high motivation on the reward at the end of it.
And chocolate chip cookies are good.
Yeah, they're great.
Okay. So what's always in your fridge?
Always in my fridge. Eggs and milk. Those are like, need to have them. If that's like the limiting factor with grocery runs. Always. And like multiple types of milk, because my kids, my husband, everybody is like, oh, milk, 2% skim milk, more milk, chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk. Okay. All right. And last rapid fire question, but if you could travel anywhere for food, where would you go?
Ooh, I'd go to Italy. Love Italian food. It's that carbs and comfort food, and just to explore more.
And more bread. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. So how can people get involved with, jumping back to the business aspect of that, of why we're here too, but how can people get in touch with Emma's Torch or work with Emma's Torch?
Yeah, we are always looking to get involved with people, whether that is hiring our graduates, hiring us to cater an event, volunteering with us, or just coming in for breakfast and coffee. You can find us at emmastorch.org. You can also send an email to info@emmastorch.org. I promise it gets directly to me. So like really, I will get back to you. Even if it's just, we just got a nice note to that email address this morning saying, hey, I was reading the news and then I heard about you and it just made me feel better. And I've got to tell you, that really made everybody in our team so much happier and more motivated. And we shared it with our students. So don't be a stranger, and feel free to reach out in any of these ways.
Okay. Well, and then there's Kerry's LinkedIn profile too. And kind of on that note, I mean, I knew this show was coming up, and I think I was just scrolling Instagram, and there's Katie Couric talking about you on her feed. And so that was fantastic.
We were really grateful. She's a tremendous supporter, and her daughter have been involved in our work. And we're just, anytime anybody wants to spread this story and to bring it to more people, we're just so grateful.
Okay, one more final question. Catering size. What's your sweet spot for size of catering gigs?
Our favorite is like 150 to 200 person wedding has been like amazing. We can stretch. We did a 300 person gala in DC last year. And we've done some things in that larger end. We've also done like corporate like lunches for similar size, but I feel like that 150 is like tends to be a sweet spot for our team.
Okay, perfect. All right. And then one last question. What do you want everybody to know about Emma's Torch?
Oh, great question. I want everybody to know that there's a place for them here. So if you want to get involved, there's always a place at our table.
Awesome. Thank you. Everybody, this has been a fantastic conversation with Kerry and that Melina. Thank you for joining us at the last minute here on Instagram over there. But Kerry, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and the passion behind it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I look forward. I'm going to figure out how to come eat at the cafe next week when I'm in DC. So I'll bring my niece.
Amazing.
And check out Kerry and Emma's Torch. And I want you to stay safe and eat well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.